Hey guys, Jeffrey from Headstrong Training Systems here. So today we're going to be taking a look at the squat and we're going to be looking at three main causes of frontal plane asymmetries and how we can go about fixing them. So when we're talking about asymmetries in the frontal plane, I'm talking about from a front-on view, instances which might cause you to be essentially out of balance or asymmetrical during the squat. Now, as we're looking from the front-on view, most commonly the three areas I'm going to go through include your bar positioning, your stance width, and your foot angle placement. So the first variable that we're going to look at is basically your bar placement, how you're placing the barbell onto your back and how that can cause asymmetries from a front-on view. Now, for example, if I was to go to set my bar placement and I've got either an imbalance in one of my shoulders, so say I've got a tightness on one side, what that's likely going to do is, as a result, you guys can probably see that the bar is going to be crooked as I'm going to perform my unrack. Now, for most people, why I talk about tightness as the cause of the unevenness or the imbalance is mostly because issues where that imbalance or asymmetry comes from due to misplacement on the bar is quite rare. Most people, they're able to pretty line up with the bar pretty easily, and most people, they won't mess up lining themselves because there's rings on the bar. So usually it's not from user error of people just not lining themselves up properly. But if that is if you had an imbalance in barbell placement, that would be the first thing I look at, is making sure that that placement is symmetrical on both sides. But then if you're still seeing that asymmetry, then from a back view, so from a view behind, you can see that the barbell sits unevenly, then most likely that's due to a shoulder tightness or shoulder imbalance. And so how we would go about fixing that or addressing that issue is I would recommend playing around with your grip. So because we know that if a tightness in your shoulders in one side not being able to get into position is the cause of that tightness and that asymmetry, then if you were to space out your grip, for example, and get into a position where that limitation from either internal or external rotation isn't no longer the issue, then you see that you become symmetrical again. Now, moving on from bar placement on your back, the next variable that I want to take a look at is basically your stance width. And what that also ties into is also your toe angle. And so right now, when we go into stance width and toe angle, most often than not, this is usually user error. At this point, it's just people, they're unracking the barbell, they're not paying too much attention to their feet, and then they set themselves into a position where they're not symmetrical. Either say this is the center line of my body traveling down, either one side is too far, and that can cause asymmetries, or you can have a toe angle where one side is more externally rotated, the feet is angled out more relative to the other side. So you might think that's a pretty easy error to perform and that most people shouldn't be performing those errors, but you also have to take into account that sometimes there might be, it potentially is just oversight where people aren't conscious of their placement. And so you see that, with a external rotated angle, you come down and you're driving because that toe angle is pointed out. And you see that frontal plane asymmetry of shifting to the left side because you've got force application to the side from an external rotated foot. Now that might just be oversight, and really easy to clear that up would just simply making sure that your placement is aligned when you step out. Or it might actually be a tightness or an imbalance somewhere in the body, and that causes for you naturally or subconsciously to make that placement to avoid pain. Now, what I mean by that is, say for example, if you've got an impingement in a right hip and you've got an FAI and you're unable to, or naturally for your body, it's uncomfortable to keep your foot more placed forward, then when you unrack and step naturally, or you see when I stand naturally, my right side is more my external rotator and point out to the side and I would have to consciously bring the left side in, but then that causes tightness in my right hip. And so it might actually be that you've got an underlying condition, an underlying issue that's causing you to subconsciously not be aligned. And how we would go about fixing that is basically conscious alignment, making sure that when you're stepping out and taking your placement that you've got both sides symmetrical. Now you might be thinking, which side do I align myself with? And the answer to that is you want to align yourself to the uncomfortable side or the side of discomfort. So essentially, if say my right side is more external rotated because I have an impingement there, then I would externally rotate my left side in order to match my right side. And the reason we do that is because we don't want to mess around with the hurt side. We don't want to mess around with the injured side. If this is the position that my hip needs to be in order to avoid pain and injury, then if I was to forcefully point that foot more forward, then that's more likely to cause more issues down the line. Whereas we can easily match the injured side and then in the background work on that asymmetry or work on the underlying condition so that over time that condition will improve. But usually you want to match your better side or the side without problems to the injured side. So that's all from me today, guys. Hopefully that's helpful for you. We just went through 3 of the variables that are likely to be root causes if you've got asymmetries in the frontal plane. So looking at me from a front view, if say you're shifting from side to side in a squat, so the 3 variables that you could look down to, maybe your bar placement on that shelf, so where that bar is situated on the back, could be your stance width or your toe angle, so asymmetries in your placement there. So that's all from me today, guys. Hopefully that's helpful for you, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take care.